So we all know how the FX2 Ultimate has performed in the past. AKK recently came out with a new VTX called the FX2 Dominator. Does this one stand up to the test? We're going to find out. Many of you know from the past that the 1.2 watt FX2 Ultimate did not put out 1.2 watts. It didn't even put out 1 watt. From a lot of the tests that I've seen, you're looking at 800 to 900 milliwatts, and then there's some outskirts. So when AKK comes out with the FX2 Dominator, you bet I'm interested. Let's see what this thing's got. So the box that it comes in is the same size as the FX2 Ultimate, but it's a little bit different color, and not that it matters at all. So in the box you get the VTX, you get the pigtail, and you get the wiring. It also comes with a very small instruction sheet. So to test this, I am not going to use the supplied pigtail. I am going to continue to use the supplied pigtail that came with my RF meter, and the reason to do that is so that I have blanket results over all my VTX tests. So the meter's the same, the pigtail's the same. The only thing that differs from each test will be the VTX. And that will also help me to understand when this goes bad, at which point I can replace it. So there's that. The other thing that I want to know in this test that's going to be different than my other tests is I finally have an attenuator. This meter, and it even says right here, plus 30 dBm max. So we don't want to overrun it, and when we're testing the higher output values of some of these things that exceed 1 watt, we need an attenuator. So this guy here is a 10 decibel attenuator, and this is a SMA to SMA. So this was like pretty cheap, Amazon, 12 bucks, something like that. So this guy just goes right in between the meter and the pigtail. And then once we're inside of this, we need to adjust this to account for the attenuator that's attached. So I'm just gonna hook this up. So this will be our test here. This is how we're going. So let's get right into that. This is the battery out of my Tyrannus. It's become very clear to me that I need a few more of these. This has I believe this is the JST connector. So this will be able to power our VTX. So before we head and do the test, I want to go over some of the specs with this VTX. So straight out of the box, I see a glaring issue. Do you guys see it? Let's do that. Yeah. Let me get some measurements here for you. I'm gonna measure this guy first. So this is your standard 30 by 30 mounting hole. So 36. And if we measure with the MMCX 37, here's the difference. 5.92 across this. 4.95 here. So this is your thickest portion. Now if we head over to the Dominator, my God, what differences? Right, so it's about the same width, 36.35, 35.9. So the length and width is the same, but look at this. This is 14 millimeters thick. versus 5.8. It's almost 10 extra millimeters of heatsink. And they tell you don't remove this. And I believe them. They've even got one on the bottom. So, for those of you that are looking to put this in your stack, I mean, that's the space of a flight controller and a VTX on its own. And usually if we're going to build a triple stack, you're looking at the flight controller, you're looking at the PDB ESC combo, and then you're looking at putting the VTX. And a lot of times the VTX is an afterthought. There's not much room by the time you get to that. So just be very aware that that's going to be a potential issue in your builds. And they say don't remove the heatsink. So yeah, it is stackable. Just know that that's an issue. I mean, it's very clear to me that that's going to be a problem for a lot of you. So I need to place emphasis on that before we even start this test. So just to place a comparison, I'm going to weigh the two of these. This is 9 grams. 9 grams for the Ultimate and 19 grams for the Dominator. So just know that you're not only adding 10 millimeters of height, but you're also adding 10 grams of weight. So something to be well aware of before going with this. Now, I understand a lot of you are going to sacrifice because this has got some high outputs on it. So let's roll with that. This guy, this is your power cord, connects right into this pin header here. And let's go over some of the things that are on this. Maybe a close-up look here. So it does come with a microphone. Here's our power inputs and camera. So we got, I'll go over each wire here. We've got our power in, our negative in. We've got our video wire. We've got our, that's our VTX wire, our video wire. We've got our ground out to the camera. We've got our power out to the camera. And then finally, we have our smart audio out to the camera. And I tried to hook up a couple of the cameras that I have. I've got a couple of run cams. I've got the Foxier Cat out here. This 4-prong doesn't like any of what I have. So most of us are just going to be cutting this off and wiring this directly to the flight controller, at least the smart audio wire and the video wire. Some of us will then run the power and ground to the camera, or we'll run a separate power and ground to the camera off the flight controller. So just know that, you know, like these balance, like most of these connectors, they don't fit most of the, I'll call them like your everyday camera. There might be some unicorns out there that this does fit into, but none of the ones I have work. So this has a MMCX connector. It's got a channel and power level indicator. And over here you've got your button to control this. And it's got a nice audible click to it. So the bottom is taken up with one giant heat sink. It's about 1 millimeter thick. It's about a little thicker than the board. I can't get in there to do an accurate measurement. Actually, yeah, I can. Yes, I can. So that heat sink, if I measure it with the board, is 5.5, and if I measure this, that's 1.5. So that's a 4 millimeter thick heat sink, and the top one is kind of going to be difficult to measure. And the top one is 5. Yeah, so that's just a quick look at what this is made out of. We got this 2 massive heat sinks. Let's go ahead and power this guy on and check our test. I want to see what it's putting out. So this does have smart audio. It's got 25 milliwatts, 500 milliwatts, 1000 milliwatts, and 2000 milliwatts. So that's 1 watt and 2 watts as a power setting. We're going to check all 4 of those, make sure those are correct. This input wire here is 7 to 26 volts. So that's 2S to 6S, which is great because that's what most of us are going to be running. So the camera, they do have a limitation. This is a 500 milliamp max power supply for the camera. So if your camera's going to be pulling more than that, know that. Like I said earlier, this is definitely a JST connector. All right, so now that we have a little bit of background as to what this is and what it's capable of, let's dive into the power meter and some of the changes that I'm going to make for this test over some other tests. So my other tests, I have used this same pigtail. This is the MMCX2. This is and I'll take this off here so you can get a better idea. This is a male end SMA. That is connecting into this guy. This is a negative 10 decibel attenuator, and because this says negative 30 max, some of these higher level VTXs, you can burn out this meter. Thankfully, I have not. So every test that I do going forward will be this situation here. Eventually these items will wear out. There's only so many mating cycles that these are good for, and the same thing with the MMCX connector. But I will be really, I'm going to be really cognitive of that going forward for each test, and once this stuff starts wearing out, replace it before it gets to the point where it is affecting my results. And off camera I can take this and do a double test to make sure that this is outputting similar results to the supplied one. To keep all my tests similar, I'm going to be using this same meter, this same attenuator, and this same pigtail. So the way to read this kind of just goes back and forth and tells you what's going on. The one flashing is your power level. The small R is for race, and then the steady 5 is for channel 5. So this is on race 5, power level 1. I'm going to go ahead and turn our meter on, and some of the differences here you'll note. I have changed this to 5800 megahertz, which is as close to race 5 as I can get. Race 5, the actual channel is 5806. So that's very close. And then the other thing that I went in here is I changed the attenuation to 10 decibels to make up for the fact that I have a 10 decibel attenuator on this meter. And this is also where you change your megahertz value for your channel. So there's that. And on this particular output, this should be putting out 250 milliwatts, and I am getting 107. So we're a little bit under. So to change our band and to change our channel, we use this button here. If we tap this button once, you can see we're going through different channels. So I'm going to put this back on 5. Each button press is one channel. If we push and hold this for 2 seconds, it should bring us to the band selection. So there's A, there's B, E, F, and R. I'm going to push and hold for 2 seconds again. Ow. That hurt. This thing gets pretty hot pretty quick. So right now we're back on 5, power level 1. So to change power level, we push and hold this button for 4 seconds. It flashes 1. I'm going to press it 1 time. We're at power level 2. So at power level 2, we should be outputting 500 milliwatts. This is not 500 milliwatts. We're not even close. This is 176 milliwatts. So far, not impressed. I'm gonna bump this up to a third power. So to do that, press and hold this for 4 seconds to get into the power level menu. There's our power level menu. Bump this up to 3 with a single press. There it is. We are at 340 milliwatts. At this setting, this should be our 1000 milliwatt setting. It is possible that their literature that they send with us is a little off, and that maybe it's 25 milliwatts, 250 milliwatts, and there's actually 5 settings. We will find out, but so far, even if this is on the third setting, which should be 500 milliwatts, we're still under. Not impressed. Not impressed. So I'm going to bring this up to the 4th power level. There's 3. Now we're up at the 4th power level. And as you can see, we've jumped up to 800. And this should be our highest power level. This should be the 2 watt or the 2000 milliwatt. And we can't even reach 1000 milliwatt. Yeah. So let me see if there's a higher power level than that. One, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Okay. So that's it. I am not really impressed. What I do wonder is if this has a temperature limiter. So if I go to Fahrenheit, it is 78 degrees in this room, and this VTX measures at 172 Fahrenheit. This may have something to do with, so these values might be skewed because this does not have airflow off of it. And I understand that our quads flying through the air will have airflow going through it, but I am testing static values with nothing going on here. I don't have a fan to test that with. So just know that this thing's sitting here cooking. There might be an internal limiter that is preventing these values from coming up. But again, this is a bench test. I'm testing it on the bench. It's kind of clear to me that I think I should have a fan to test this with. But these are the outputs that I'm getting. My other tests were on the bench with no cooling. So this kind of shows you if there is a limiter, it's severely limiting. This is supposed to be 250 milliwatts. So the one thing that is kind of a glaring thing here is there's no 25 milliwatt setting. You're not racing with this. Just know that. This thing is too heavy, it's too thick, it's not going into a race build, period. So that's why it doesn't exist. This is a long-range VTX, and we have to treat it as such. So know that. That's why that setting doesn't exist. But for this to output at 80 milliwatts, at you can see it here, the power level 1 is flashing. That's supposed to be 250. With no cooling, I get it, but again, you're gonna arm your quad, you're gonna put it on the ground, and these are immediate numbers. I just plugged this in and I just got these numbers. So I'm gonna go through one more time and see if these numbers have not gone up or down. I'm gonna hit this for 4 seconds. Here's my power level. I'm gonna jump up to 2. I like that it's immediate. With some of the other ones that I've tested, you have to hit the power level and then go through the whole menu system and get back out. This is immediate. So I like that. And let me not stab myself in the hand. That would suck. So this is the 500 milliwatt setting, and we're down here at 159, 160. Let's check our temperature. So temperature again in the room, 78. Our temperature here has gone down a little bit, and I think that's because I was down here at the single temperature, at the first power level for a little bit. We're still at 165. That's a pretty hot VTX. So carrying on, next I'm going to go to power level 3. So there is 2, 3. Let's jump to power level 3, and we're up at 300. And again, this should be at 1,000, and it's steady right at 279, 280, somewhere in that realm. And let's check the temperature here. Temperature is fairly steady, 173. If I change that to Celsius, 78. So I have a feeling that there is a built-in temperature limiter, and it is bouncing off that right now, which is why we're getting such low values. So again, take that into account throughout this test. I am underwhelmed with these values, but if the temperature limiter is kicking in and this is still safely outputting, 280, that's kind of enough to get yourself into the air and get going and get this thing cooled down. So there's that. Finally, let's go ahead and check that last value. So there's 3, 1 button press to 4, and we are at 700 milliwatts. This is the highest output. This should be 2,000 milliwatts or 2. So the temperature did rise a little bit. I'm looking at 189 it was like 170, 180. It did raise just a little bit. This is the highest output. So again, I truly think that we're popping off a limiter here, and it is grossly limiting the output of this. If I were to compare this to the TBS Unify Pro HV, which is a 1,000 milliwatt output, which outputs at almost 2 watts. It's like 1.9, the one that I tested. But with a temperature limiter, brings it down to its stated output value. So if this one were to do the same, in order to achieve the 2 watts, it would have to output at, let's say, 3 watts or even 4 watts if we're going to cut it, and then have it fall back to 2 watts. This, we're cutting power by 3/4. Should be 2,000. We're down to 500. So just know that going into it, I'm going to have to redo this test in the future, I think, with some cooling on this. I don't run cooling because I want to test in like a worst case scenario. This is what this thing outputs sitting here cooking in the sun, cooking at a start line, cooking at after a crash, something like that. So this is the absolute worst case scenario. This is what you're gonna get. So let me change this back to power output 1. And again, we're down to 40, 46, and this is supposed to be 250. So we're a little bit less than 1/4 of the output. So not only did this come with heat sinks, this is a power limited device. Will it output these high voltage? Will it output these higher values? Highly likely. It's neutered with the temperature device, and I don't see a setting to shut it off. The TBS version of this has a ability to shut that off. Okay, so that's a quick look at the FX2 Dominator. It's kind of clear to me that I need to have some sort of airflow device across these VTXs so that I can not only test them static on the desk with no cooling, but something then that I can cool them off and perform the same test directly after. I really think that it would be unfair to say don't buy this device because it doesn't output a lot because it wasn't cooled off. These are going to be flying through the air. They will be cooled, and there's reports that these come down pretty cool after the flight, even at the 2000 milliwatt setting. So just take that into account, that this was a static test. And I will come up with something in the future to cool VTXs on the desk, something like a computer fan or something like that. But my main concern here is I want a good audio video for you guys, so you can hear what's going on and you're not listening to a vrr of a fan going, yeah guys, this is good, this is good. So it's a bit of a filmmaker's conundrum, but I will work on finding something that's cool enough that can cool something like this down and not affect the test, audio or video or any of that sort of stuff. So just know that's coming. For now, just know that this is just a static bench test. This is what this thing's going to output before you take off, or as soon as you crash or what have you. Those are the values. The temperature limiter in this thing is there, and it's immediate. As soon as I plug this thing in, I mean, it got up to temperature and immediately started blowing our values down. I would have thought that it would take a little bit longer to get up to a temperature. I mean, even at the 250 milliwatt, like that should not have gotten up that fast, and that should not have limited that fast or that hard. From other VTXs that I've tested, I mean, I've had them on the bench for like 5 minutes plugged in, and then it just started getting to the point where it was started to limit. So, you know, I do say maybe give this a chance, but on the other hand, it should not limit that hard that quick. This thing was plugged in for all of 30 seconds, and I'm getting tiny little values out of it. So yeah, I mean, I hope this video helps you out. I personally don't see myself putting this into a quad, even now that I own it. I don't know, maybe I will. I really feel like if I put a device such as this into a quad that's going to be a quote-unquote long-range quad, I need complete and utter trust in my components, and I don't have that with this. So take it for what it's worth. I mean, AKK makes some good products. They just I don't know. I really feel like if they just called these channels something a little bit different, that they would have gotten what they've gone for. So if they called this a 1 watt max output, so they're 250, call that their 100. Now you're outputting over the 100 value, and when it starts choking back, you're still outputting over the 100 value. Change your second from 500, change that to your 250, and now when you're outputting at 250 limited, great, we're great. And then I'm going to skip the 1000, and go straight to the 2000. When you're at the 2000, change that to 1000, so that when you are outputting 800 limited, you're still close enough to your rated output values that you're selling the device with. So I really think that's where it is. It's not that it's a bad device. I just think that they're a little fluffed up in the marketing. But again, if this device was cooled down on this bench, we might have gotten different results. So again, you cannot discredit that fact. I know it, you know it. It is what it is. Every other VTX I have tested on this bench, I have not cooled. So part of me wants to cool it to show you the other values. Part of me says, no, this is what my test is. So I haven't quite figured out what the answer to that yet is. Leave me a comment below. How do you feel? Do you want me to change the style of these tests? Do you want me to continue exactly as I am? Let me know. Let me know. I want to do what's right for you guys. It's not about what I feel. It's about what you guys feel. So let me know. So if you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, click that thumbs up button. And just go ahead and punch that subscribe button, because you only get to do it once and it's fun. And I'll catch you later. Peace.